Okay. I would like to call the regular council meeting of May 30th to order. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. Approval of the agenda, we have laid items 6.1 and 7.1.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Minutes,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor? Oh, sorry, you have a question?
No, I'm all in favoring.
Okay.
Voting.
Carried. Delegation. That council received the delegation of Ian Hasselgrave and Brenda Hooker from School District 71 and also Sarah Jane Howell, trustee, the representative from Cumberland. Welcome. Look forward to your presentation.
Move receipt.
Thank you for having me.
Second.
Go ahead.
I did.
All in favor.
Yeah, we did. Sorry.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm Ian Hesselgrave, Director of Operations for School District 71. Brenda Hooker is here, Secretary Treasurer, and of course, Trustee Howe. So I have a presentation that we'll have on the screen here. And I understand you've been in the committee the whole meeting for a fair while, so we'll make this as zippy as we can. And I'm excited about the subject matter. We're talking about new stuff in the village, and it being childcare, which is certainly more than relevant to the needs of the community broadly. There we go. So that is somewhat of a reasonable facsimile there. It's just a bit of an architectural rendering of the facility that will be constructed in the near future. So we're going to talk a little bit about the building and an overview and some quick facts and figures, price tag, construction schedule. We had a session with the community, an information night. It was excellent. It was well attended, and we had lots of good feedback, which has informed our design and our layout on the site, and we'll talk about that. How can the Village of Cumberland help? I think that's a really relevant issue. We're all in this together. I think we're serving the same families and constituents, and it's up to us collectively to make it better. When we looked at this facility, and we're back in the time of the joint submission, where the lion's share of the work was done by the Village of Cumberland, there was a couple of very informative documents. One I have up here is Comox Valley Childcare Action Plan. This is one page of about 150 that are in that action plan. I handed these out at the information night because there's some incredible statistics in there. 81% of the children in the Comox Valley do not have access to licensed childcare. The stats in there are overwhelming, and they speak to the incredible need in the community. Lots of good information in the whole survey, talking about age groups, demographics, where do we really need the support. So when the village submitted the application through to MCFD, there was really just notional numbers put in there. 10 infant, toddler, 20 of this and 40 of this sort of thing. And then what we did though is we really ground into the numbers. And the Village of Cumberland Child Care Action Plan that's dated on the 4th of August 2020, which you can find on your website, we read through that in detail. This is I think a really germane summary of that. At the time, there was 267 new spaces needed for families in the community. So we did the math. So of those, 0 to 2 were 50. So that is about 18%. 59 is pushing 24%. 158 of the 267, you're up in the 50 plus percent. I think it was around 54%. So what we did when we looked at the design of the building, we ensured that our numbers for infant, toddler, preschool, and before and after school match those ratios. Okay, they're not exactly on because there's also some golden numbers around the way the staffing has to go for looking after those kids. It's important to follow as well, or you all of a sudden make it very difficult for the operator. So when we did these building specs, so 12 infant toddler, 16 preschool, 18 it says multi-use. That's my error in there. It's multi-age spaces. Multi-age spaces is typically a weekend operation where you can throw a bunch of kids into the same spot. and then 39 before and after school spaces. So 12 of those is about 18%, 16 runs around 24%, and the 39 before and after is about 55%. So we're sitting right in the nice wheelhouse for what the needs of the community directly are. Within there, when you do a building like this, because of the multi-age group, we divide it into 4 studios. So that is like 4 classrooms, 4 components of a building. Building area, 515 square meters. This is all driven by licensing because you try to make it as tight to the licensing requirements as you can because every square meter costs you dollars. 515 square meters, about 5,500 square feet. It's around a 1-to-10 ratio. Licensing requirements definitely drive the design. The number of washrooms, what the entrances are going to look like, and all the other bits and pieces. And I say that because when we get into the design inside, there's not a lot of room for conversation. We can't make a lot of manipulation within there to satisfy demands of folks that may want to see a certain feature, because you might detract from the licensing requirements and get yourself into an unlicensed facility, which is not what we want. And of course, cost of construction is very high. It's not uncommon for us to be facing a $3,500 per square meter cost. And when you do out the math, it starts to get really, really expensive. So what it means is we have no wiggle room. When you get the money from the ministry, it's a fixed sum. The highest you can get is, at that grant application time, was $3 million. And we ended up getting 29950, and we said to them, "Where's the other 50? We'd like that." So we'll talk about the site a little bit, then we'll get into the budget. So this is a little bit of a confusing drawing. Because on the far right-hand side, what it shows is sort of the larger view. You can see Egremont there, Rydell, Forest Hall Road, and where the Strathcona building is, or what was formerly the elementary school. That area is in and around where the disc golf course is, and there once was a forest in there. That's the location off of Egremont of the childcare facility. It's a really good location on the site because we can easily interconnect to the Strathcona building, which has the kids of the age that are going to need the before and after school care. So a simple transition, and transitions are really important. In the bigger scale, I don't know if I have the green dot. Oh, gee. Okay, I might have to, where's the,
This green one there.
okay, let's see if it gives me, it's not giving me a light here. Oh, the battery's toast. Okay, well, that's all right. This dotted, the dotted line in here is really important. So what is that, right? That's actually where the tree line is right now. So if you look through the site, there's an office, so the trees are all living in this area, and that is how the tree line is going to stay unaffected within this site. So this being the property line, the site setbacks we're kind of about to here, and we have put in some trees, but all the trees inside that tree line, they're all staying. Okay, so when we did the positioning of it, and we'll talk about community feedback, we actually shifted the building based on community feedback, and we fairly strategically located it at that spot because it allowed us to keep the largest trees that are on the site. Okay, so the entrance we've reconfigured, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well, because there was certainly some juicy feedback from the community around Egremont and the traffic on that road. This is what we mean about it being 4 studios. So you have, if this is the front, roughly the front entrance here, we have some storage areas, you know, everything from strollers and backpacks to central area that's kind of administration, like kitchen, mechanical, that sort of thing. You have to have a staff space, that's all licensing requirements. These 2 activity rooms are the young'uns, because this and this are nap rooms. It's mandatory that you have a nap room that you can fully darken, and those are spaces that would be used for before and after school care. So it's much easier for us to break it into spaces, because you have to keep the 0 to 2-year-olds separate from the 3 to 5-year-olds have to be able to have that physical separation. So those activity rooms really define the space, and they're laid out for that age group, and each one has the correct kind of washrooms and all that stuff. A little bit of a look from the outside. It will be an attractive building. There'll be some wood features in it, but mostly it'll be non-combustible, so metal cladding should fit in nicely. All right, price tag. Eek.
Yes.
When we look at a building like this, you'll see the red on the bottom. We're into a problem, right? Construction costs about $3.2 million, professional fees. Value engineering is us cutting and hacking. Okay, we've removed a lot of things, like it doesn't have a peaked roof anymore. It has a flat roof. There's no crawl space. We've nipped and tucked wherever we can to generate savings. We brought it down to about 2.9. Contingency, you have to have it. FF&E is really furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So that's all of the washers and dryers and microwaves and fridges and stoves that you have to have in there. And then we have a $10,000 line item for our building permit fees. So the dollars get big fast. So as a district, we're going to be on the hook for about $300,000, right? So that's a substantial hit for us. Part of that is we didn't get going right off the hop. So we lost a fair bit of time, and every day was $1, for us. And the ministry has been very unflexible. Signed agreements, so we're going to see this one through. But these are places where we're saying, how can we work together? Construction timeline. So we, as soon as that was transitioned, we hired our construction manager. Design development is complete. This is getting ourselves to a place where we can submit drawings to the village. They're in. So the construction drawing package is here with the planning department. It wasn't the first time they saw it. Not being our first rodeo, we always know we want to talk to the municipality before we lay something on them to smooth the waters and figure out if there's any challenges right up front. So we think we'll have a really smooth process. It's been good working with the village staff. All these drawings are at the place where they'll be going out to tender. So we're doing some things consecutively. We see our tender period ending in early July. Construction, we're going to be pressing the construction firm to mobilize in the summer. So you should see site trailers on that piece of property this summer, with construction beginning in September. We're really good at working on active school sites. We know how to do that. So we know we can do that safely. Project done in June. Takes another month to get occupancy and licensing. So our viewpoint is that once you have that operator and their license, they have to fit it out, right? There won't be kids in there in July. We would anticipate that in September the doors would be open, which is our goal. We want the doors to the child care facility to open when the school opens in September, okay? So feedback from the info night. They said we had along Rydell, we had a number of neighbors that went, "What are you doing? You're going to chop down all the trees and you're going to kill our view." And we promised, no, we're not actually taking down all the trees. You can see where the tree line is. It's a low building. So if you're in a home, in those properties, you probably won't even see the roof of the building. Nonetheless, what we did based on that feedback is we moved the building south and east to create an additional buffer, and the exact location, we're digging test pits. We'll confirm as soon as we have a soil condition analysis done, but we're pretty sure that the neighbors actually won't even be able to see the building. So that's a good thing. Preserve the biggest trees in the area and ensure the stormwater gets dealt with. It's a really good point, right? Because when you take out some trees, and we have to take out a little bit of foliage there's more groundwater. And so our civil engineer has done a full stormwater management plan, and we have a third-party arborist working with us who will help us make good choices. Exacerbation of an already high traffic area. So certainly neighbors on Egremont were going, come on, why do you have to locate this here? And for us, it's a school, it's zoned as a school, it fits perfectly in there, it serves the community, so we see this as an ideal location. And what we are doing is working with the village staff around how do we manage any additional vehicles that are coming there? We don't think there'll be a lot of additional vehicles, because if we're talking that there is 30-some spots, 20, 25 maybe, spots for kids that are 0 to 5, there's potentially that many extra vehicles on the road. Some of those will be siblings of kids in the school, so they're will already be accounted for. We're hoping some will move there actively, so we don't see that as a real issue. I think it's a long-standing challenge on Egremont that the village is well aware of. So what we have done, though, is we originally had one entrance. And so based on the feedback, we've modified the entrance so it's an in and an out. So that will help with traffic flow and make it less dodgy for the folks in the area. Losing connectivity between Forest Hall Road and Egremont, because there is, if you know the site, there's that wonderful path that goes right through it. What we are going to do with the path is once we have the building finally established, that's where we work on walking paths, because we think there's a broader walking path question for there. How do you get from certain parts of the community to the child care facility, including Forest Hall Road, and then how's that connect to the school or even the Perseverance building, which is a former medical clinic. So there's a lot of work to do on paths there, and based on the Busy Beavers up the hill there creating our mountain bike paths, we're pretty good at that in this community. So I don't see that as an issue, but certainly we'll make sure that connectivity is there. And of course, when will the facility open? That was a big driver there, because family know, when can I get my kid in there? Right, so for us, our goal, September 1st, 2023. Now, we don't have the operator yet, so that's something we're working hard on. I wrote an RFP, which I sent to Kaylin, who has done a really good review of, and we're doing a couple of modifications, because the school district's going to own, manage, and lease the facility to an operator. So it makes sense that we procure and come into the license agreement with the operator, but we're doing that as a collective. So the village staff will sit with school district staff as we make that value judgment around who the operator will be for this facility. So that RFP I hope to have out on the 6th of June, close it at the end of June, and then there's a piece in here where we drive this information through the community. As a public body, we put all our tender documents on BC Bid. There aren't many childcare operators that frequent BC Bid, unlike the contractors. So we make a personal phone call or an email to every operator in the community broadly. Kaylin will look after Cumberland because we don't want anybody left behind. And we'll also get our fingers out a little further into other operators that have more of an island presence. This is a big facility, and it needs some mass. When we procured the operator for Lake Trail, we didn't have a lot of choices, right? Honestly, we got a really good operator, Teddies and Toddlers, that works out of Vanier. They're operating that for us, but it's tricky, right? So there's pieces there, but we want that operator on as soon as we can, because if we can get them selected this summer, that gives a year of working together as you finish this building, which what I found with Lake Trail was invaluable, having them on the team, because they have those eyeballs on what you really need inside and potentially where we're maybe tilting at windmills, as facility folks. So we have some good plans in place, and I think the other thing is there was a concern that we heard articulated in the community that, now that this is going to be open, well, maybe we don't need what we have in the community for operators. Well, our feeling, of course, is nothing is further from the truth. If we go back 4 slides and we look at the demand problem, we have a lot of kids in this community that can't get access to childcare, so we need everybody and then some, right? And so we don't feel that anyone will be displaced, and it's a very positive story, and we really enjoyed working with the village staff, and we'll continue to do so closely here as we walk down this path. But we're charging hard ahead, and we've had many meetings with our contractor, who's the construction manager. Be out to bid soon, and you'll see a lot of progress. We know how to do projects effectively and quickly when young people are involved. So there I am. So this is, how can you support us? Off-site works. Let's do this stuff together in the right way, right? So integrated sidewalks. So that's a portion of the active travel part that reduces the demand for vehicle traffic on Egremont. So, but kids are not going to, or families are not going to walk their kids to the childcare facility if there isn't a safe way or a perceived safe way to do that, right? So what we need is to make sure that our sidewalks line up with the facility. So I know Rob Crisfield and I have had conversations, but I know there's a design element there. Even things like fire hydrants, the support that you can give us, because we're kind of in the hole on this, we know that right off the hop, with things like fire hydrants and civil connections, facilitating that work for us is really helpful. Building permit relief, I know that's not something that any municipality wants to do because you have your own real costs, but we have our own fiscal challenges with this project as well, and we are kind of in this together. Playground equipment. We have not taken a deep dive into the playground. I have procured all the playground equipment at many school sites, and I'm doing it at the Lake Trail Child Care Center. It's not inexpensive because you have to have equipment geared to a number of ages. One of the things that we do, though, is rally the community, and for things like the Lake Trail and Vanier facility, making sandbox, making even sheds because they need to store stuff in them. So those things where the community can get together to do that. I mentioned the same thing. Can Kalen facilitate grants with Rotary for us for play area toys? That would really help. Certainly the interconnecting pathway part. We want to work together. One of the things we say in the school building business is sometimes you're better off not to put the sidewalks on until you figure out where the feet are going. So you see where the beaten path is and then follow it with the sidewalk. We can't really do that with some of these code accessibility things, but the interconnecting pathways, we want to get the building in there and then work collaboratively on how we're going to do that. Perfect spot for some community support, some donated gravel or cart path material, some really good things there. Landscaping, we want this to reflect the community. We want it to be simple so it's easy to maintain, but we would love to see some diversity of species in there that certainly reflect the community. And outdoor fixtures and furniture, donated benches, those spots to rest in the shade where we plant a tree are always really welcome, at any kind of facility. So that's where I think we can really collaborate. We'll keep you in the loop as it progresses with some regular updates, likely through Caitlin, or where I can come and do a little update to council as well as needed. But things to keep in mind for us, about how we can work together. Are there any questions?
We usually go around the table, so I'll start with Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian, for the presentation. I'm happy to see the bit of shift to, there were a lot of concerns at the meeting about the trees and the siting. So that's great. I remember the grant being for 85 spaces in the beginning. And so was that the D-scope that was required for funding, or?
It is. Yeah. That actually went forward early on down to 75, and we are actually looking, we're putting one in at Arden and Glaceview as well, and same story is at 75.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's a dollars and cents problem.
Yeah. And my other question is, I'm glad we're getting as many spaces as we can, and that's the best we can do with the current situation. That's great. I have a bit of concern about the equipment arriving in a timely way, because I hear that's a thing, that getting the furniture and equipment, fridges and washers and dryers and all that stuff has been challenging.
I just did that for Lake Trail, and actually it was okay.
Okay,
It was
awesome.
okay, but you're right. So appreciating that, we start that process early.
Okay, great. And then in terms of who gets the spots, is that the service provider? Is that the district? Is that who's responsible for deciding who gets in?
There's two pieces to that. It's a great question. So any childcare facility located on school district property, we have a certain number of reserved spots for school district staff.
Right.
And it's not very many. Like if you look at the Lake Trail facility, we're talking 2.
Yeah.
Right? So we have a small number that are reserved for school district staff, and then the operator manages their own wait list.
Okay. And so when we are collaboratively locating our operator, we could request that they choose Cumberland Kids first or something like that. We could also, is it possible that we could have multiple operators in that space? So there could be someone who's providing before and after school or after school care in collaboration with the other service providers?
We tend not to do that. We think there's some really good options. For example, Boys and Girls Club. Because they have a very long history of dealing with multi-age, and we're better off having one operator that's accountable for the building because they tend to do this. We are engaging the Cumberland School Society though, because they have their own programs and things they run, and Sue Lovelace and I are meeting next week to talk about some of this integration part. And bear in mind that we're also have an expansion project on the books for that building, which within that we would be looking at neighborhood learning space, if you remember the NLC space notion, which would ably support the Cumberland School Society that does a different form of program. So we think we're attacking it from a number of angles.
Okay, but if someone put in a proposal that included multiple providers, but it was under one organization or something like that, that's an option.
They'll all be considered. I think we when we do our RFP, we have criteria, and we measure against criteria, so we try to do it in a very disciplined, open, transparent way, and you get points for things, and it's everything from down the social procurement side, where do you live, right? And what we typically find with childcare is that they generally serve kids from the community they're in, because it is, at the end of the day, so hard for parents to get from one spot to another. So the draw of a Courtenay parent, I know there's very limited spots, but still typically it is going to be kids from the community. You get points if you're willing to do weekend time. So there's lots of places, but there's certain things that we don't make as a fixed criteria. Otherwise, we narrow the pool too much, and you can't get anyone who's willing to run it under such strident conditions.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Kettler?
Thank you. It's really great that you were listening to the community and incorporating the stuff like the tree line and the trails, the low roof line. I really appreciate all of that. And I know that, the school district's challenged with now having to do all these daycare spaces all over the Comox Valley, and that it's a lot of extra work for you guys and under tight budgets, which we really understand here in Cumberland. And I want to help you guys out as much as possible on these costs. So I'm wondering from staff if we need a motion about how we can collaborate on some of the items that are listed there, particularly like the building permit relief, some of the playground equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah, later on the agenda is a report that proposes an MOU, and I would suggest that would be a good time that we could talk about some of this and any terms of that, which does include some opportunities for us to explore financial support.
So we can take this list that he has here and bring it to that conversation later in the report.
I think that probably makes the most sense, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sproul?
Well, I'm very happy to see we're at this stage. I haven't been going to the meetings, so I'm happy to see we're moving. But the end date is actually, that's proposed, is actually much sooner than I would have thought for such a big project as this. There's a lot to think about. But you must be an expert now, Ian, after doing so many schools.
The faster the better, honestly.
Yeah, really,
Yeah.
you're in that.
Yeah.
Mindset. But when I see this list, I think, knowing all the things that Sandwick School, I don't know if Sandwick still exists, but they make wonderful concrete picnic tables, we have them in some of our parks, and I mean, a lot could be made in the shops classes. I mean, it would be great to see real life practical.
Potentially, for sure. Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks very much, Ian. That was an amazing presentation. I don't have any children myself, but every time I go by Lake Trail for the last several years, I've seen all the improvements taking place, and they're quite breathtaking. And it looks like you guys are incorporating all the best practices. And I have to say, as from the beginning of this project till now, and just listening to Councillor Kettler talking about the changes that you've implemented from listening to the community, I don't think I've seen a development adjust so quickly and succinctly. So really good job on that. And I really like how you're saving trees and listening to our community. And that's fantastic news. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. I did attend the presentation you did at the school, and it was so nice to see so many parents out, and you addressed all their concerns, so that was another extra bonus on your part. So thank you. And I think it's going to be something that we're all going to be very proud of, and we desperately need it, so thank you. Do you think you're going to have any trouble finding a construction company that's going to do it?
No, we're working with a construction management firm that we have a significant track record with, and I met with them on last Wednesday morning just to say okay, and they said they have the site superintendent, foreman available, and they have a number of sub-trades they regularly work with that, because they continually provide steady work, that we think we have a really good chance of hitting all our milestones. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Sun.
Sorry, one question I forgot. At the first slide, you mentioned the $320,000 shortfall. How
Yes.
does that get made up?
Through School District 71 budget.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll once again thank you very much, and I'm certainly glad that we partnered with you. And I'm sure our staff are very happy also.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're looking forward to having it in the community because we have this same staff parent challenges that I think everyone does here. So it's a good thing.
So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Okay.
Next, recommend that council receive the correspondence from the City of Campbell River re 55 plus BC Games application for information.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. A number of years ago, the Comox Valley joined with the Campbell River and put on a summer games, and it was very, very successful. We actually had a number of events here. A lot of people traveled to Campbell River and into Courtenay to see many of the events. It was a huge success. There was lots of participation. So I think it would be great if they once again want to do this, but there is a recommendation there. If anybody has anything they'd like to add.
I mean, an open in-kind invitation is concerning somewhat for our staff capacity and just exactly what that entails.
It will come to us. Staff will bring a report back.
I certainly support it in principle.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's not quite enough information about what they're expecting on our end, but yeah, I also support in principle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time we just allowed, they had square dancing in the CRI building.
That's probably fine.
So I'll move that council direct staff to report back to council with more information to support an application for the Campbell River and Comox Valley local governments to jointly host the 55 plus BC Games in 2024, 2025, or 2026.
Second.
All in favor? They're going to make sure they get one of them. Unfinished business, none. Reports, recommendation that council receive the development variance permit application 2727 Allen Avenue.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the village has received an application for a residential infill development permit and a development variance permit to allow the construction of a new ADU The purpose of this report is for a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission. So the applicant is proposing to vary the maximum gross floor area of the ADU as a percentage of the GFA of the single-family dwelling from 75% to 91%, which would result in an ADU of 89.4 meters squared, or 962 square feet, which is still within the permitted maximum GFA of 90 meters, 968 feet. The subject property is in the R1A zone, which allows for a single-family dwelling, a secondary suite, and an accessory dwelling unit. So for the development permit, the application and supporting documents meet all of the residential infill permit guidelines and zoning bylaw requirements, except for the maximum permitted GFA percentage and the use of building materials that reflect the character of the principal dwelling unit. As the existing single-family dwelling is quite run down and planned to be demolished, it's not practical to have the ADU reflect the character of the principal dwelling. And the property owner intends to have the new primary dwelling unit, when constructed, complement the ADU. The 3 parking spaces required for a single-family dwelling and ADU would be accessed via the existing driveway and would be accommodated on-site behind the single-family dwelling. The proposed on-site parking is in the same location as the existing carport and parking area, but the carport is planned to be demolished. The south-facing deck has been screened from the westerly neighbors, and small windows have been designed for the walls that face adjacent properties. On the west side of the ADU, a wall provides screening for the side entrance, outdoor shower, and bike wash station. Established trees located just along the rear side and rear property lines provide vegetative screening to the neighboring properties, as well as the Wellington Colliery Trail. With the proposed ADU and existing house, the lot coverage is proposed to be 25%, and R1A permits 40% lot coverage. Stormwater management is being addressed on site with a bioswale that overflows into an engineered rock pit via underground pipes. For the development variance, so again, the applicant is proposing to vary the maximum GFA from 75% to 91% of the existing single-family dwelling. The applicant is proposing to build the ADU first and then demolish the single-family dwelling and construct a larger single-family dwelling. A new single-family home would only need to be about 1,300 square feet to make the proposed existing ADU compliant with the zoning bylaw, which could easily be accomplished following current setbacks, lot coverage, and permitted height. And the current existing dwelling without the carport is about 1,100 square feet now.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler? Okay, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, so on page, sorry, I just scrolled past. I'm looking at the south side setback, so the back of the lot. It looks like, if I'm reading the diagram properly, that the deck, or I don't know whether it's the deck or stairs or something there, is sticking out over the 1.5 meter setback line. Sorry, page 42 of the document.
Page 21
yeah,
is a
okay.
good look at what you're talking about.
21, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was
I have it
looking
on
at.
42.
Yeah.
I
It's on
believe,
both, I think.
I'll have to confirm, but I believe that's level ground concrete to access underneath the deck, which could project into a setback. If it's
Okay, and
just,
that's
if it's
fine.
just ground level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then, thank you. So I'm happy to see something happening on the property after, I think, about 4 years of nothing, no tenancy there. So happy to move this forward. But I am concerned that we're considering a variance based on a possible future build. And I would like to, since an accessory dwelling unit is supposed to be an accessory dwelling unit to a building that is on the property, I would like to see the plan for the primary dwelling of the property before we allow an ADU with a variance on the property. So not requiring that that be built, but that we have a plan. And I also have some concern there. It does say that there's screening, there's some retention of the trees on the south side, but there's like I think a collection of fir trees that could also be retained if possible. So, yeah, I'd rather wait to see the plan for the main house before we approve an accessory dwelling unit.
Anyone else have any questions? So what is your pleasure?
I'll move that council refer the application for development permit 2022-03 DP for a new accessory dwelling unit and development variance permit 2022-04 DV to increase the maximum permitted GFA of the ADU for 2727 Allen Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for comment.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, that council receive the Cumberland Child Care Project Update Report recommendation.
Move your seat.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Hello, Mayor, Council. It's nice to be in front of you again. As expected, your childcare update report in front of you. The report is intended to do two things. Firstly, provide you with an update on the project, what I think Ian has already eloquently done for us, and I think moving on to the second part of reviewing or talking about that MOU and getting your direction for us to enter into that MOU with School District 71 so we can continue to work forward in partnership on sort of these outstanding items for the project. I'd also like to acknowledge, you can see how capable the school district is at building these facilities. Having sureties of their own construction management and those types of pieces in-house, and how far they've been able to bring the design of this project, and how difficult that would have been for staff to do that through any other sort of partnership. So I would thank Ian and his team for being here and presenting on this tonight. When Ian presented, there's a list of items there that he acknowledged that the village could be of support with, if you've had a chance to look through the MOU, you can kind of see that at a very high level. These are the items that I've suggested that we want to include within the MOU, and maybe not in the specifics of the actual acts of things like helping procure playground equipment or other types of items like trails and stuff, but those types of specifics we're happy to talk and discuss and include with this MOU. So specifically, we wanted to acknowledge that the village wants to have a participatory role in the design, as we have so far. You can see how well they listen to our community concerns. A lot of those items that the community brought up were items I know that council and staff have talked endlessly with Ian and his team about, so it's nice to see that reflected in the design. Of course, the inside of that school space is licensed, so there's not a lot of wiggle room, but there's a lot of ideas that we can influence and support on the outside of that space through the landscaping and the design of that yard. An opportunity even for us to contribute to those by, using our services to harness the energy and resources of our community to contribute to this project. The MOU also has some components around making sure we participate as a partnership in the selection of an operator. Of course, I've made a note and heard from Councillor Brown the acknowledgement that making sure that Cumberland community and families benefit from this project is something that we'll always make sure is something that we can have a say in. As well in the MOU, we've talked lately about some financial considerations in the way that we can contribute financially directly to the project. I think most significantly right now, there was a time where we held that grant money from NCFS, which we accumulated some interest on. And so when we handed over that grant, we retained that interest. And so Michelle has made an accounting of it. It's just under $10,000, but she's going to have another look at it. She thinks there might be a bit more. But through this MOU, we've committed to providing that monies to the project. Likewise, using my resources and other resources through ours to find grants or other community partnerships that can help contribute financially to this project is another way that we can contribute. They had a couple of items up there like permitting support. As you know, we can't waive fees, but maybe the monies like this interest that we provide goes towards accounting for some of those permitting costs. And of course, making sure Rob and his team are aligned when we go to do our civil works. Fortunately, we had the design and the implementation of sidewalks along that area within our current work plans. That was something that was part of the original grant, including playgrounds. But that was 2020 money. And of course, everything has to go towards making sure we get as many childcare spaces as we can. I'm confident we can pick up some of that slack by harnessing the energy of our community as well. So that is the MOU, the gist of the MOU. Making sure that our values and our interests continue to be part of that project as we work in partnership with the school district. I'm happy to discuss it more, answer any questions, or make any inclusions based on input from council.
Any questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so going back to the list of things that they're seeking our help with, you know, the development permit, for example, you know, our bylaws won't let us like waive fees, but if we put it into an MOU that the village will be responsible for this service, then is it a way that we could then provide those development permits with the cost on the village?
I can jump in there. We still need budget for it. So no matter who bears the cost, we all need to find money to pay for the time and in service of,
Yeah.
of a permit.
Yeah.
So what we're thinking of is, and we've spoken with Ian, and you may have noticed in his presentation, he highlighted that $10,000 value. That seemed like a starting point for a conversation.
Yeah.
Michelle was just crunching some numbers on that interest, and we've had a very early conversation on, given interest rates have been so low related to a pandemic, is restarts funds available. There'll be a report coming to council likely next month with the next round of restart allocations, and there's an opportunity to potentially consider, you know, topping up that interest payment there. So the MOU is strategically done to be somewhat loose while we explore these, recognizing that any budget amendments are going to need to come through council down the road, because we don't have any budget.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, will we need the MOU written in a way to help us get to those places that we want to be in supporting the school district? Or should we not pass this today so that we can have a report come back, see what we can do with the list that we were given, and then see what needs to be put into the MOU and then pass this?
I think the school district would be comfortable with even a less formal arrangement than the MOU, and they're happy that we're just pursuing this.
Okay.
So I think the MOU is largely in response to council motion at the time of agreement transfer about defining the village's role, and that's what we're attempting to achieve with this, and making sure that staff have understood that that council directive to continue to be involved in the project. And so we knew operations and selection of an operator was one. This funding piece has come up a bit later as they have gotten further into project estimates and whatnot. So I don't think from the school district's perspective, I think that would just prolong a process that's probably already happening anyway. And the way the MOU is written enables us to now get creative and determine what funding sources may be available through a budget amendment or allocation of a restart grant.
Okay, that's
Thank
good.
you.
And I would acknowledge there's other risks in holding off on the MOU because of the financial piece, is that we're going to get into operator selection, and we've already done a piece of design. And so one of our intents is to get this MOU kind of nailed down so that it does provide that framework where we're at the same table. So right now we are acting in good faith with a very good partner, fortunately, but there is risks associated with prolonging that as well.
Okay, and then what about the piece of reaching out to the community for in-kind support for the various things that they brought forward today? Such as the playground equipment and Rotary, or, you know,
Yeah.
trail building or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't started those discussions with any specific groups yet, kind of wanting to get a bit of design and understanding of what that space can fit. But, you know, it's going to be one of the latter pieces, probably spring of next year. And so, you know, this summer and fall and spring, there's an opportunity to gain some momentum and have those discussions.
Okay, thanks so much.
Someone like to make the motion?
Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
So the MOU says that we, under the village roles and responsibilities, will take the lead on facilitating community interest, support, and/or participation in the project to generate additional opportunity and/or benefits for the project. So I think that covers the outreach on the playground. So we could probably fit the playground in there, the pathways, the landscaping, the outskirt, like it's half the list of what they've asked for. So if the community's willing, to do that.
I mean, and that's the MOU, and it's very, very tactful language, because
Yeah.
we could, that's really our role is, as the leads in our community to harness that energy and to see if there's interest. And I think that's part of the piece is the value that we bring is being part of this partnership is being able to do that. So, we've already had preliminary conversations beginning with childcare providers in this community, earlier work with Ian Kalina, and so that's how Ian is connected with Sue and some other childcare providers. Piece of the feedback that Ian's brought to us and school district brought to us in this, there is a bit of concern right now with some parents in our community. It seems that childcare providers may be thinking of closing because they think this facility is creating more demand or more supply. And so there will be extensive, like when you go to RFP, I'll reach out to all the providers in town and have that conversation that no, your services are very much needed. We will continue to engage and talk to our service providers as part of this process. I think having us there as part of the village is an important piece of maintaining that trust and knowledge, and so that they know when there's opportunities like this who to talk to.
Yeah. So as far as I can tell from the what you've got in the MOU, the sidewalk is also in there, and pedestrian safety improvements along Egremont, which we had thankfully in our budget. So the only thing that's left is the fire hydrants and civil connections, which I don't understand how that exactly works or how we might assist with that. So is that the only, I feel like that's really the only.
And that might be something down the road when we have further discussions with the school district about something that we can look at, finding our financial contributions, if it's other grants or if it's other community partners, or if it seems to me, I can't speak, but like our fee schedules with, we can't waive permit fees. We're just not allowed to. So I'm not sure it's the same way with the installation of that type of process. So we'd have to look into how that is, but my expectation is that would be more of a financial contribution.
Okay.
Okay, move along. What is your pleasure?
Move that council approve the intent of the draft memorandum of understanding with School District 71 for the Cumberland Child Care Project, and that council direct staff to finalize and execute the MOU with SD 71.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Next, that council receive the remedial action order 2721 Derwent Avenue report.
For receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. The purpose of this report is to present an inspection report on the property located at 2721 Derwent Avenue and recommend that Council declare the property and its contents a nuisance and declare the unlawfully constructed accessory building a nuisance and a hazard, and issue a remedial action requirement order to the owner and occupiers of the property. So the staff report in your agenda outlines the history of complaints received regarding this property, the unlawful construction of the accessory building, and bylaw enforcement action going back to 2018, including a previous remedial action order issued by Council in 2021. Unfortunately, there were issues with the service of the notice of that remedial action order. And however, The village continues to receive complaints about the property, and the owner and occupiers continue to permit nuisances on the property, and the accessory building constructed without the required permits remains occupied. So staff proceeded to conduct a second inspection on May 16th of this year, and an inspection report is attached to the staff report, and it shows the extent of the nuisance on the property. Based on that inspection, staff recommend that council again consider declaring a nuisance and a hazardous condition on the property and impose a remedial action order, requirement order to the owner and occupiers, which is termed as an RAR order. So this RAR order would declare that the nuisance and a hazard and require the owner to remove the matters constituting the nuisance and to demolish the illegal garage shop structure that was constructed and continues to occupy the property. Staff have provided written notice to the owner and occupiers that council is hearing this matter at tonight's meeting. If council proceeds to issue the RAR order, the village must serve a notice of the order to the owner and the occupiers and must deliver a notice of the order to all charge holders on title. The owner and the occupiers are entitled to request that council reconsider the RAR order by providing a written request within 14 days of receiving that notice. And if they do so, they would be provided with an opportunity to make representations to the council, after which council would confirm, amend, or cancel the RAR order. If the owner and occupiers do not request consideration and the owner fails to comply with the order within the time set out of the order, which is 30 days, the village may fulfill the requirement at the expense of the owner and recover costs incurred from that person as a special fee and debt, which may be collected in the same manner and with the same remedies as property taxes.
Any questions from members of council?
Read the entire resolution.
I'm just going to ask that in a moment. Councillor Brown?
I just wanted to say I don't have a question. I'm happy to move this along. I just wanted to note that we have received more than 33, as in the report, 33 written complaints and many, many phone complaints to the bylaw enforcement officer, the manager of protective services, and the chief administrative officer. And this property has been of concern for quite a while. Many thanks to staff for all their work on this, and apologies to the neighborhood that we are unable to, for
Do you have a
various
question?
reasons. No, I just
It's the question.
am going to
I'm
wrap
asked.
up. Anyway, I just wanted to appreciate the staff time that's gone into this and recognize that the neighborhood has suffered, and that's why we're moving forward again with this RAR. Thank you for the time.
Could you answer the question, Rachel? Do we have to read every item on this, or would it be appropriate to read it all?
No, you could make the motion as presented in the staff report.
Okay.
Adopt the resolution as presented to.
Yes.
I would say that
Bottom part maybe.
council read section I,
X and XI or O.
yeah, that council considers and declares the accumulation in section I, and then number 2, and then like the main parts there.
Okay, did you get that?
Yeah,
Sure. You want
that council.
I and I.
Yeah.
I?
So that council considers and declares that the accumulation and untidy storage of the following matters and things located upon the property are unsightly and a nuisance and are so dilapidated or unclean as to be offensive to the community, all within the meaning of subsections 74(1) and 2 of the community charter. And
That council
That-
considers and declares.
this one?
Second I. Bottom of 3.
Yeah. Oh, no.
That council considers and declares the following structure situated on the property is a nuisance and that it is in and creates an unsafe condition, that it contravenes the provincial building regulations and the Village of Cumberland's building bylaw, all within the meaning of subsections 74.1, 73.1A, 73.2A, and 73.2B of the Community Charter. And that the following remedial action requirement order is thereby imposed upon the owner of the property pursuant to sections 72, 73, and 74 of the Community Charter. And that should the Village of Cumberland staff, is that right? X1X or IX? Is that it? Oh. That pursuant to section 78 of the Community Charter, the time limit for giving notice of a request for council to reconsider this remedial action requirement order is no later than 4 p.m. on the 14th day after receipt of the notice of remedial action requirement order. Is that enough?
The next one.
And that in the event that remedial action requirements set out in paragraph III are above are not completed within the deadlines noted, the following all happen.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much. It has been a trying process, and I hope this is the solution, because the neighbors and people that walk by have really had enough, and it's timely. So thank you very much for all the work from staff. Next, bylaws. That council received the Good Neighbor Bylaw Report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. The purpose of this report is to present a Good Neighbor Bylaw, number 1168, for Council's review and consideration. And this bylaw was drafted under the authority of the Community Charter to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements by bylaw for the protection and enhancement of the well-being of its community in relation to nuisances, disturbances, and objectionable situations. The village has an existing public nuisance bylaw that was adopted in 2007, and this bylaw is now enforced on a complaint basis. As we've used this nuisance bylaw for some significant nuisances, we've realized some of the shortcomings of the bylaw and the need for some further enforcement tools. So this proposed Good Neighbor Bylaw presented in this report, it's been drafted with legal review and is intended to update this 2007 bylaw to current legal standards, as well as to incorporate effective tools necessary for the village to support compliance and enforce the bylaw. These tools include the recovery of costs from the nuisance property owner rather than those costs being funded by property tax revenues. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about application and enforcement of this proposed bylaw. The bylaw has been deliberately drafted to give the village broad powers to address significant nuisances in the community. In the bylaw, the term nuisance is defined as any conduct, activity, or condition that unreasonably interferes with a person's use and enjoyment of a public place or property that a person owns or occupies, or which annoys or gives trouble or is offensive, irritating, or a pest to anyone in the village. The powers of the bylaw are deliberately broad to enable the village to enforce the bylaw effectively when necessary. And that's a key word, is when necessary. It's essential for the village to enforce the bylaw in a reasonable manner and to ensure that it is considered, what is considered for enforcement reflects community standards. And I'd like to point out that community standards are not necessarily reflected in the bylaw itself, but the community standards are reflected in how the bylaw is enforced. So reasonable enforcement is achieved through council direction to staff in its bylaw enforcement policy. And this policy has been in place since 2012, and it generally provides for complaint-based rather than proactive bylaw enforcement to ensure that regulatory bylaws are responsive to community standards and expectations. The policy also directs staff to attempt voluntary compliance with village bylaws before enforcement action is taken. The policy is also intended to prevent the village from responding to bylaw complaints that may be vexatious or that may be a result of neighborhood disputes. To further ensure reasonable enforcement of the proposed bylaw, village staff have been working to update the bylaw enforcement policy to clearly provide staff direction to respond to nuisance complaints only where the nuisance is significantly impacting adjacent residents, where there's more than one bylaw contravention taking place, and where the village receives complaints from more than one individual directly impacted by the nuisance. Reasonable enforcement would further be assured through instructions to bylaw enforcement staff through written procedures. And throughout the process of drafting this Good Neighbor bylaw, staff has been very aware of the importance of how the bylaw is enforced. And I think we've heard some feedback in the community today about the concerns about how stringent the bylaw is. One of the, and to that point, staff has prepared a late item here to make a change to the bylaw before first reading for council to consider. And this, when you think about the bylaw enforcement policy, it's a separate document to this bylaw. It doesn't specifically address the Good Neighbor bylaw. And there was concern from staff that, there's opportunity for staff to perhaps that direction given in the policy not to be clear to staff. So what staff is proposing to include in the bylaw itself, the body of the bylaw itself, a purpose clause to really clarify how that enforcement is to take place. And it's stronger than the policy in that policies can be amended through resolution from council, but by including this statement in the bylaw itself, it embeds it into the bylaw. And so the proposal is that the bylaw statement be added in section 1.2, which states that the purpose of the Good Neighbor bylaw is to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements and fees in relation to nuisances, disturbances, and other objectionable situations, and to authorize broad powers to be applied in a reasonable manner in response to complaints received that involve significant nuisances and negative impact to neighborhood properties. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the enforcement tools that are key to this Good Neighbor bylaw. There's 3 tools included. The first is fees for excessive nuisance service calls, and I want to emphasize the word excessive. So where village staff, bylaw enforcement staff, and RCMP and other staff have responded on site in relation to nuisances more than once in a 24-hour period or more than 3 times in a 12-month period, this tool would allow village staff to impose service fees to the property owner for any further calls within that 12-month period. So this doesn't come into place immediately. It's only after we've had a number of calls previously. The second enforcement tool is compliance orders and abatement fees. These compliance orders are an enforcement tool where a property or owner or occupier refuses to comply with initial bylaw enforcement or voluntary compliance. Compliance orders may be used for any nuisance, including unsightly property, and must include a specified and reasonable time for compliance. If the condition of a compliance order are not met, the bylaw authorizes the village to take action to bring about compliance and impose abatement fees on the property owner for work done or services provided to the land or improvements. And I want to note again, these are for significant nuisances that where the cost to bring about compliance would be a burden of the taxpayers of the community. This tool puts the cost onto the property owner, and it's really a good tool for encouraging compliance with the bylaw in those significant nuisance circumstances. And of course, enforcement tool is always the use of ticket fines from the bylaw enforcement officer, as well as enforcement through the Offence Act penalties. which is pretty standard for most bylaws. So I'll talk briefly about the recovery of excessive nuisance call fees and those abatement fees. If they remain unpaid, the province allow for a municipality to recover the amounts in default in the same manner as property taxes. And if unpaid at the end of the year, they're deemed taxes in arrears, similar to how the village currently collects outstanding utility fees. I can note as well, there is an opportunity within the bylaw, whenever you delegate certain powers to staff, that we must provide an opportunity for an individual to appeal those orders to council, and the bylaw provides for that. One thing that we have heard with the feedback over the weekend with the how stringent this bylaw is that there is an opportunity here that's laid out in the staff report that council may direct some minor changes to the bylaw tonight, and staff specifically recognize the certain provisions in the bylaw that may be a little too stringent, and those included the sort of like the height of weeds in the yard and the number of vehicles parked on the property. And council is welcome to make those small changes and make some adjustments to the bylaw tonight. I think more significant changes to the bylaw should be reviewed by staff and the village's legal consultants and brought back to council at a future meeting. When considering these changes, council is asked to keep in mind that the principle of reasonable enforcement, and that it is intended that the bylaw be enforced upon complaints received for a number of violations to the bylaw. If the regulations in the bylaw are reduced, it could impact the village's ability to effectively enforce the bylaw for a nuisance property. So the bylaw is intended to be enforced when there's accumulation of contraventions. So for the village to enforce those, if those restrictions are raised too much, it would really impact that when those situations arise.
Okay, are you finished?
Yeah,
Okay.
So, and an option with any changes, the bylaw sets out recommended the first three readings, but if council feels more comfortable with perhaps having first reading tonight with that recommended change to the bylaw before first reading, and gives us an opportunity perhaps to reach out to the community and really make sure that the message is clear about how the bylaw is to be enforced for these significant nuisance properties.
I think that's good advice. I would so agree with that we do first reading tonight and have any input that we want and give the residents the opportunity to speak up. It's really exciting to hear that so many have viewed it on Facebook or by email, by the number of emails that we all received and phone calls. And it's really nice to know that people are listening and watching. So does anybody here have anything that they would like to recommend? Councillor Kettler, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I think Rachel did a good job of making it clear that really these are for, the most egregious properties that are in contravention, and any single one of these things, I think, all of us could be guilty of any single one on their own. And so that, the public response is understandable, but the intent is that, of course, there would have to be multiple infractions and multiple complaints, and it really would have to be a problem property for us to act on it. But having said that, and having heard the feedback from the public, I would feel more comfortable amending the bylaw for first reading, in particular 4.2J, the parking, storage, or accumulation of more than 2 motor vehicles, boats, other recreational vehicles, or trailers combined per dwelling unit. I would like to increase that to 4, and have first reading and then have staff come back to us with legal opinion on how that might affect our overall implementation of the bylaw.
Okay,
So I've put forward that amendment.
yes. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I just wonder about is it 13 centimeters or?
15 centimeters, weeds or similar ground cover, I believe.
So we have that, but we also have the noxious weed and the other things. So, yeah, that just feels really fussy to me. I'm not sure we need to have it in there because there's lots of other landscaping things that could be used to accumulate enough. So maybe we take out the, which is E under unsightly on page 84. Weeds are similar ground cover that exceed 15 centimeters in height, because we all know we should be keeping our dandelions in the spring for the pollinators.
My only question about noxious weeds, is it in any other bylaw that we have?
I believe it's in the existing public nuisance bylaw.
Okay,
Yeah, so
Thank
it
you.
would be repealed.
Oh,
upon
it will be
adoption. It
repealed.
would be upon adoption of this. This bylaw is intended to replace that bylaw.
so we do need something in there about noxious weeds.
It's in there in a separate
In a
line.
category.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was a little surprised at the comprehension of the village today, but I went in to get myself sorted out with this and talk to staff. I appreciate Councillor Kettler's amendment, but to staff talking about just having enough teeth to approach these problem houses and significant nuisance houses. I think if 4, I don't know, I feel like 3, what's the magic number for illegal stuff? And I think the community really needs to understand that if you have 2 cars in a boat, we're not coming after you. If these are significant nuisances, and so the villages and the staff are just trying to protect the community actually from these houses. So this is kind of the intent behind this bylaw. So yeah, I don't think I support the 4. I think that's a little excessive as far as if we do need to actually go into a nuisance house. I mean, allowing them to have 4. So I think the intent with 2 is just to be able to control these nuisance houses, not everyone. So I don't know. I think that the request for 2 is reasonable in the regard of these significant nuisance houses, which is not the majority of the village. So I don't know if I support 4, but maybe going up to 3, just so everybody breathes easier. I don't know, but I'd like to give staff the tools that they need to take care of these houses that have taken an incredible amount of staff time. Council specifically have talked about some of these nuisance properties for more than 3 or 4 years and take a lot of time. So I'd like to provide our staff and the community with the bylaws necessary to actually take care of these problems because we don't have those bylaws in place. Thanks.
Councillor Sproul?
Well, I think there has to be some limit to it, but we have to decide on the. Do we have to decide to that detail tonight? Well.
If I may, if council agrees on a change tonight and gives the bylaw first reading, it will come back and there would be opportunity in time for staff to take a look at those numbers.
Okay, so next time it comes back, we can look at it again.
Yeah.
And at that time, we could provide a little bit more commentary on the potential implications of such changes.
Okay, because this was all done through legal advice?
Yeah, we would conduct some research and that would be part of it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with 4 because it includes the recreation vehicles and stuff too, so it's not just cars. And I know we have 3 at my house, so yeah, I think I'm happy with 4. And I'm happy with having legal look at that and making sure that that's strict enough when it comes back.
Yeah, I would like to look at that too, because I have 3 vehicles, a trailer and a 4-track. So I would be out of compliance too. Not now, knowing the whole idea of the bylaw, but I think it would be easier, but I would like to see it come back with the other, that option.
My understanding, I completely understand what everyone's saying, but my understanding from staff is just that if it were to remain at 2 for only these significant properties, that these issues come up, then they have the proper ways to deal with it. I don't think staff is coming to Councillor Brown's house or anyone else's house. I think Rachel did a really good job at describing the situations in which staff will serve this bylaw or fine to you. I don't know if I think 4 is too much. I think staff has asked us for 2. I think 4 is too much. Maybe 3. Like I said, staff has clearly stated that we are not going to be ticketing everyone in the entire village, because basically everyone has more than 2 vehicles on their property. So that's not the intent. So I just don't want to get muddy with allowing 4, and then suddenly there's a nuisance property that has 4, but yeah, so that's just.
But it's a combination, and
I understand. I understand. That's just my opinion. I understand there's a combination of
can
cars.
I respond?
Just a minute, and I'm going to just respond. I don't feel that I will ever be considered a nuisance, and so I will bow to your 2.
I just feel like this
Yeah.
is what staff is requesting, and I think the intent is not what everyone seems to think. And
Yeah. I think you're right. Okay, so we need a motion, no matter what.
wait, are we still talking about that?
So, yeah, I agree with Councillor Sullivan that really what we're trying to do here is save taxpayer money. We're trying to put the costs where they belong on the owner who is contravening the bylaw. So, in that way, we save taxpayer money. So that's the main goal here, and to go after those owners that are, like I said, most egregious offenders. So we don't have the tools, or we don't have good enough tools at this point in time. This bylaw is intended to give us those tools. I just think from the response of the community, even if it's just through a lack of understanding, that we should make the amendment to include 4 vehicles to avoid panic, and
How about 3?
and still have most of the tools in there, and still have staff come back and tell us how that change would affect our ability to implement the bylaw.
Rachel, I have a question. Sorry, Councillor Brown, just a sec. Is there any other communities that have this good neighbor policy and have the 2 vehicle limit?
There are a fair number that are moving to this good neighbor bylaw system with these tools. And I think I would say that the 2 vehicle limit was part of that template that we were provided. And I think there's room here to increase it for sure if council sees that, absolutely. An alternative is we could go back and take a closer look at sort of, look at our zoning bylaw and other things like that we have parking requirements set out for on-site, and we could come back at the next council meeting and make a recommendation on maybe what's a little more suitable for the community.
Okay, Councillor Brown?
I just wanted to clarify that regardless of the particular number of vehicles, that this bylaw wouldn't be used if it was just vehicles. You would have to have a combination of vehicles or equipment or derelict vehicles or noxious weeds or any of the other things that are listed in the very long bylaw. So
As well as multiple complaints. I was just adding on to that.
Thank you. As well as multiple complaints from different people in an amount of time. So thanks.
So what is your pleasure, council? Did you have anything else, Councillor Sproul?
No, there's two pieces of paper we got at the beginning, somewhere in here. So I don't know. What
Okay.
Oh, that was the one.
So would somebody like to make a motion then?
I already put forward my motion for amending the bylaw.
Is there a seconder?
Don't we need the full motion?
Well, we're just going for first reading as well. So
Yes.
With the-
She's-
I will second that.
With the amendment.
I will second that.
I can clarify that that was just to change that parking, the number
Yes.
of vehicles section, not, we're not at the reading
4.2J.
part yet.
Yes.
To allow parking and storage of more than 4 vehicles.
So
And
you,
to give the
Was
bylaw first
Councillor-
reading.
Councillor Brown was talking about that weed. Sorry, you guys were talking about the weed one. Does that get struck too? Was that part of that
That's not
amendment?
part of my, I'm
No.
only moving the 4.2J. Yeah.
yes.
And could I ask for the inclusion of section 1.2 as set out in the late item to be added as well?
Okay.
Yes.
So your motion is to change the regulation from 2 to 4 vehicles?
Yep. Under 4.2J, and to add staff's amendment 1.2.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
So then I'd like to make a motion to remove the 15 centimeter weed or grass, which now I've lost where it is on the page.
So you're saying that it can grow to any height?
There's a whole section around landscaping. And I'm asking that we remove item E from the landscaping section, which limits the height of grass, or I don't have the specific wording in front of me.
Weeds or similar ground cover that exceed 15
Thank you.
centimeters in height.
Yes. Just a reminder that people at home don't see what you're reading. Okay?
Oh, of course
For
they don't.
clarification. Okay, so they know what you're talking about. Okay?
These agendas are all available online.
Yeah, some
They
people get
certainly
them,
are.
some don't. Okay, that was seconded? Did somebody second that? Okay, moving along to the next one then.
Second that, actually.
Hmm?
I'll second that.
You're going to second it now?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Next. We're taking it to first reading, are we not?
For first
Yes,
reading.
This
Yes.
is for first reading.
Yes. And the other two?
What other two?
Other recommendations? That council direct staff to prepare an update to council's bylaw enforcement policy, and that council direct staff to prepare an amendment to the municipal ticketing bylaw to include ticket
There you go.
amounts for
I have it.
contravention. Okay, can you read them, please?
That council give first reading to the Good Neighbor Bylaw, number 1168, 2022, with the following section added. The purpose of the Good Neighbor Bylaw is to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements and fees in relation to nuisances, disturbance, and other objectionable situations, and to authorize broad powers to be applied in a reasonable manner in response to complaints received that involve significant nuisances and negative impacts to neighboring properties. And that council direct staff to prepare an update to council's bylaw enforcement policy to update proactive enforcement areas and prioritize enforcement responses to complaints. And that council direct staff to prepare an amendment to the municipal ticket bylaw to include ticket amounts for contravention to the Good Neighbor Bylaw.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yes. that council receive the election procedures amendment bylaw number 1169, 2022 report.
For receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. Council will recall back in, when was that, March 28th, Council discussed amendments to the election procedure bylaw to allow mail ballot voting, to eliminate the special voting opportunity, and to move the second advance voting day to the Wednesday prior to Election Day. And this relates to the local general election that's taking place on October 15th this year. Staff has prepared a bylaw which sets out, makes that change to the advance voting day from Saturday to the later Wednesday. And this would give people a better chance to make an advance voting day that's a little bit closer to the main election day, hopefully opening up that opportunity a little bit more. The bylaw also sets out the procedures for procedures for the mail ballot voting, including a period where electors would be able to register to receive a mail ballot package. And the procedures set out in the bylaw, they actually supplement what's in the Local Government Act. There's quite a few procedures for mail ballot voting in the Act itself, so they're supplemental to that. And the bylaw is recommended for first 3 readings and must be adopted before, I believe it's July 4th of this year, to be ready in time for the fall election. Thank you.
Any questions from members of council? Yes, Councillor Brown?
So I know we talked about this before, and I apologize if I was confused. So the advanced voting opportunities are both on Wednesday. So there's 2 of them, and they're both on Wednesday because the general election day is a Saturday.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
I
what
just
this
wanted to make
bylaw
sure
will do.
they were not all on the same day in case somebody's always away on whatever day, right?
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, it would be the 2 Wednesdays before election day, and the general election is on the Saturday.
Okay.
And we plan to hold all those 3 voting opportunities at the Cultural Center this year.
Awesome.
Right, I'll move the council give first, second, and third reading to the election procedures amendment bylaw number 1169, 2022.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. No new business, notice, motions, and announcements. Village Hall, June 6, 2022, at 7 p.m. at the Chinatown Pavilion, weather permitting. Heritage Committee meeting, June 7th at 5 p.m. here. Advisory Planning Commission, June 9th at 4 p.m. here. And regular council meeting, June 13th, 2022. Question period. If anyone has a question, they can send it to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. And please limit to questions only. Comments will not be read. And we do have a guest in the sitting there. Do you have any questions? I do. If you'd like to come up, you're welcome to.
I think just be aware that you'll be in the view of the camera there if you stand at the mic.
Okay.
They just see your back, though.
They'll see your back.
They want to see my front. So I'm curious about.
Would you say your name, please?
My name's George.
Oh, sorry.
We're live on air. We don't require that.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Mayor Baird, my apologies.
We'll go with that.
I know who you are.
I was a longtime resident, so families lived in Cumberland here for 50 years or so. So my father passed away last year. He was a walker around town everywhere. So we're pretty well known in the community. We went to high school and elementary schools here. So my concern, and I came here tonight to try to glean a little bit more information about this Good Neighbor bylaw. If you look on social media, there's $1,000 fines for this, $1,000 fines for that, and councils taking more money from people and all this kind of stuff. And I got myself a little wound up, so I wanted to come in and find out some information for myself. I have 4 vehicles on my property. They all run. One is a boat, one is my work trailer, one is my wife's truck or Jeep, and one is my vehicle. We spent a lot of money renovating my house after my father had moved out, and we have lots of ample parking. I'm wondering, am I gonna be one of these people that gets, hey, and I get what the gentleman down here is saying, that all it takes is a few complaints, but everything's parked away neatly. The only thing that's on the front of my property are my trucks or my two vehicles and my work trailer. That's a concern for me. Am I gonna be in trouble with the village because of this? When I moved back from Calgary, I parked my vehicle in the street wrong. Facing, there's a bylaw officer says you're supposed to be facing this direction if you're on this side of the street. I whipped in and I parked, I was in the house for 10 minutes, I came out, there was a ticket on the truck. And my thing is how do I get a ticket for this? Are we that stringent on it? This is my concern. Am I gonna be getting a ticket for having my used vehicle, the vehicles that receive usage, they're registered and all that kind of stuff? I could see if council was, this good neighbor bylaw, if it was for vehicles that are on 27, 21, or 31, where there's no registration on 3/4 of the vehicles there. I don't want to be lumped into that, get $1,000 fine or whatever council's thinking they're going to be doing.
Okay. We're hearing you and we're listening, and we hope we've explained it well tonight, but we do have some more work to do on it.
There's some conjecture. Four vehicles, the gentleman said maybe 2.
Yes.
What do we
But
do about?
also, to be fair, just to my point, and I have the same concerns, that's why I went into staff today to find out exactly what this means. And just the intent and the delivery is not what you're reading, I don't think. And that's so the significant nuisance. That's the thing. So significant nuisance is going to be a separate place. So you, sir, are not a significant nuisance. None of your neighbors think you are. You have ample parking. You will never hear from the bylaw officer.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. Basically, this is more to give us teeth for the people, the nuisance places. This isn't to open up, like the bylaw officer would not now be allowed to go and ticket everybody as he wishes. That's not possible. So there's an avenue that the village can take with this bylaw, and that's the purpose. It's not to come and get you, then people like you.
Yeah, I know on my street, I live on Allen Avenue, and on my street, there's been a significant amount of ADUs built and suites built, and almost every person that lives in those are couples, and they each have vehicles, and I believe on my street, there's 24, 25 vehicles.
And I'm familiar with Allen, and most of those houses have multiple suites and definitely like 5 cars parked in front of them. I can't see them being ticketed anytime.
Okay. I think you need to wait until we come back. We'll have more details.
Well, like I said, when the social media goes rampant,
Yes. That's why some of us aren't on social media.
I'm really happy that you're here. I was expecting 60 more people, and I'm kind of disappointed that you're the only one here. Actually. Thank you, Bella.
Excuse me, Councillor.
Sorry.
well, it just got to the point where I'm angry, and then I thought, you know what, you don't have all the facts.
Yes.
Why let yourself roll around in this state?
Mm-hmm.
And the only other concern I have is this, just up the street from me, you talked about this 2727 Allen Avenue, that's, going to be built up.
We're not going to answer any questions concerning that property.
You're not?
No.
So it's not an open question period then?
It's the ADU.
Oh, the ADU, okay, I'm thinking of the other property. Yes, okay.
Yeah, no,
You're talking about the ADU. All right,
correct.
all right.
Behind that house, there are massive fir trees.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see those come down.
Thank you.
I had to fight to get my 75% when I was doing mine. 91% kind of makes me, I know it's up the street and it's not my property. And not only that, but the
And that
grass,
hasn't been passed.
that grass up there is 2 feet tall every year. Nobody's cutting the grass there either, so
No, it's been empty.
I cut it once.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being a good neighbor.
Okay, well, no problem. So we just watch the minutes or attend a future meeting to find out what's going on.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
Online questions?
Online questions? Yes.
I do have some questions here regarding the good neighbor bylaw. A question, why would the length of the grass be so defined in a bylaw?
We've just removed it, did we not?
That's correct, yeah. When will council decide to have a bylaw that when the village staff knows a bylaw, such as zoning or building, is in contravention, that it enforces without needing complaints from citizens? I think it's a question about proactive enforcement.
We aren't supposed to be doing proactive enforcement, are we not, on some things?
Under our current bylaw enforcement policy, there's 5 bylaws that are to be proactively enforced, and they focus on health and safety matters. Council's given staff direction this evening to review that policy and come back with proposed amendments.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Next, we're going into the closed portion again. Yes.
I don't have it.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again at the next meeting.
Thanks.
Also, I was at the 2 p.m. one, and you guys were mentioning like an arts and culture kind of group maybe put on by this society, like a workshop and stuff. Would it be kind of like helpful, just like kind of saying what you'd like to see? Sorry, I'm sorry, just a minute. Sorry.
We should adjourn.
The meeting is adjourned.